All right, I think we are live. I'm just going to hit record for here as well. Beautiful. Good morning, Liz, and welcome to our interview within our Compassionate Women's Health community this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for agreeing to be one of my interviewees. We spoke a few months ago when I first met Kerry, and she introduced me to you because of your own personal story. And I remember saying at the time, October's really, really relevant for your story. So let's talk then. So I'm really pleased that you're now part of my process of honouring pregnancy and infant loss awareness. Well, I've heard day, week, month. So I am honouring it during the whole month. And then we'll be coming back together again on Wednesday, the 27th of October online, 7 p.m. Brisbane time, as a panel, as a women's circle, to bring our stories together and bring the community together to really honour this subject. But I'm just going to give Liz a quick introduction, and then I'll hand over to her to share her story, and then we'll have a bit more of a chat. So Elizabeth is a devoted mother of 3 earthside children and 1 angel in heaven. She is inspired by the potential and possibility for good in those around her, and has always had a love for learning and teaching. Liz is qualified as an enrolled nurse and carer and has worked in aged care and supporting children with chronic illness and special needs. She is currently studying to be a breastfeeding counsellor and educator. She volunteers her time at Writing for the Disabled and Days for Girls, where she has been involved in preparing and distributing reusable menstrual kits, educating women and girls on menstrual hygiene and personal care in Australia and Africa. She was also privileged to raise money for the Catherine Hamlin Fistula Hospital in Ethiopia, where she visited and ran the 10-kilometre Great Ethiopian Run in promotion of the hospital, the women they help, and the empowerment of girls to become leaders. Elizabeth loves poetry and enjoys writing. She is proactive, hardworking, and empathetic. Her support of nature means that you will never stand alone in a just cause. Elizabeth has recently taken part in publishing her first co-authored book called Achieving Parenthood. We'll definitely talk about that this morning. So I'd love to hand over to you now. Can you please share your story, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Oh, it's weird being introduced. I'm like, oh, that's me. Yes. So, okay. Well, I guess this part of my story starts with being newly married. So it's back in 2004. When my husband and I were doing some traveling around the world. I had relocated to Australia, so I was probably in a little bit of a challenging headspace already, having relocated countries and left my family all in Canada, which was hard. It probably didn't hit me until about a month or so after having been in Australia. You kind of think, oh, this is an adventure and it's all really great and exciting. And then it kind of hit me like, oh, wait a minute, I'm really on my own here. You know, I don't have my family. I don't have that support system. So it was about a year after we were married that we decided, well, actually, it was probably before that, but my husband did an exchange program. And part of that was so that I could go home and I could be closer to family, just to have that time, because it was really a struggle. A lot of people would say like, oh, you're going to Australia, that's super easy. Like they speak English there. And, you know, and I remember thinking, no, they don't. They do not speak English here. So, you know, like all kinds of culture shocks that you don't really expect because you're going to, you know, a Western culture and whatever. So that those were parts of the challenges sort of starting. Anyway, we went back to Canada and we were there for about 6 months. And while we were there, we'd been having those discussions about, you know, starting a family and how that would look for us, and didn't really ponder on it terribly long. We just kind of thought, yeah, okay, you know, if it happens, then that would be good. And so we kind of just, wasn't really a fleeting thought, like it had some discussion, but it also wasn't a big thing to worry or stress about. We just kind of thought it'll happen when it happens. Anyway, it did happen fairly quickly after that, and we found ourselves, expecting a baby and really excited and slightly terrified and thinking, can we do this? And so planning then to head home to Australia and sort of be prepared to welcome a baby home. And so we sort of did our standard, do the checks and get your ultrasounds and do all those things that you think you should be doing. And didn't really think past that, like that anything could go wrong or that we should prepare for all the scary stuff or anything like that. I grew up in a family where having babies was a fairly uncomplicated event. It was aside from being really sick, possibly, babies came into the world quite easily and they breastfed easily. All of those things were seemingly fairly simple. So it wasn't really on my mind that it would be any different for me. Yeah, I just sort of thought, mom had 5 babies and she did that really well. And, the only thing I knew was that she was extremely ill during her pregnancies. And so, which unfortunately for me, I had as well. So I was very sick, kind of that 24-hour nausea that people never really talk about. Morning sickness. What is that? So that's when so things kind of just went along and it became exciting. Anyway, it was probably a few months in that aside from your standard sort of pregnancy issues, I wasn't feeling terribly well. And I have a history of some health concerns growing up that always kind of gave me problems here and there, but I never really associated the two. I just sort of thought, I guess because I didn't know much about what could go wrong in pregnancy, I just thought, I guess this is pregnancy. I guess this is just how it is. So as we continued our journey home, we kind of went through the UK and we kind of went all over the place. And I just continued to get worse and worse in the way I was feeling and symptomatic with things that didn't quite pair with pregnancy.
What kind of symptoms were they?
So I had a lot of joint pains, inflammation, swelling, like now that I look back on it, and a huge amount of swelling that wasn't normal. You kind of just think, you're gaining weight or you're getting a bit puffy in the face type thing. But when we look back on photos, and my husband and I both go, oh my gosh, you were so sick. Like you didn't, I remember, I think in the book, I sort of explain it as being when we got to Singapore, I was just so exhausted by then and I was hardly able to walk and we just kind of kept pushing along. But it was kind of like walking on water balloons. My feet, that's how sort of swollen and sensitive they were. It was like they were so swollen that they might just kind of burst at any minute. So I was really quite unwell.
And you were what, about 6 months pregnant at this stage?
Yeah, that's right. I would have been probably about 25, 26 weeks along. So we made our way home to Australia and I kind of just ensued this daily activity of trying to keep myself from being sore. So I started getting chest pain. I started getting, where it was hard, it was very uncomfortable back pains that were not eased by wheat bags or warm baths or anything. So I would spend like hours in the bath, just sitting there trying to not be in pain, and reheating the water. And then we've been to the GP, we'd been to seek help. And I was told various things like you've strained a muscle, or these are really disappointing pieces of information now that I look back on it, and even way at the time, I remember sort of saying to these various health professionals, but I haven't done anything. Like I remember questioning in my own head, like, hang on a minute, this doesn't add up. Like, what have I done to strain a muscle? I remember being really confused, but at the same time, really unable to advocate. It's a strange, it's kind of like an outer, you're like sitting here watching yourself respond and yet somehow still not able to change the situation. And I know my husband was just trying to be a support to me, but at the same time kind of feeling helpless, like not knowing what to say or not knowing how to question and go, wait a minute, can you just check again? So I was prescribed creams and I was prescribed other things, you know, for muscle pain and this and that. And I remember at the time really talking to my mom and my sister and my sister-in-law, just saying, like, I don't know what to do and I'm in all this pain. And they were really concerned for me, and all of them were at a distance, which was challenging. But anyway, as I said, I can't even describe the sort of pain that I was in. It's really hard to put any sort of descriptors on that, but it was quite agonizing. And I remember just laying on the floor. I was really hot and uncomfortable. And it was that moment that I was kind of laying on the floor reflecting. And I remember thinking, I haven't felt the baby much. And this was sort of my first thought. I haven't felt the baby much. And to me, that wasn't really like hopefully nowadays with the information we're trying to arm mums with, that's an alarm bell right away. Yeah. That's something where you go, hang on a minute. You know, we talk about count the kicks and all of these things now, know your baby's movements. So I queried that and I was like, what's happening? And unfortunately, and this is part of the reason why I'm so much wanting to talk about this journey, is because unfortunately there's a lot of myths surrounding pregnancy still, where they might say, drink some ice cold water, you know, or, you know, push around on your belly and wake the baby up type thing. And we know now, like, all of those things are not true. They are not a way to rely on and know the health of your baby. So I remember doing those things, like, okay, I'll drink some ice cold water and see if it helps. Like, even at the time, if you'd go in for, you know, a checkup and they'd listen to the baby's heart rate, if the baby's heart rate maybe was a bit low, they would give you some ice cold water, but like, go home, have a rest, this sort of thing. So I did all of those things. And then I just remember thinking, no, it's been a really long time. And I was hesitant to go into the hospital, but I called them anyway. Long story short, I was directed to probably go to the wrong hospital, where they did a series of tests that weren't really appropriate to check on maternal well-being and the well-being of the baby. So that I was discharged and sent home with everything seemingly being okay. And I remember sort of at the time saying, but what about the baby? Like, you know, like, I remember thinking, what about the baby? And they kind of just haphazardly were like, sort of half checked, like, oh, you know, we can sort of see. So those all should have been things along the way. First of all, that shouldn't have happened. And second of all, that I could have then said, I'm not okay with this. Like, I'm not okay that you haven't made sure the baby's okay. So that was about 26 weeks. I'm probably mixing things up again, that I first started thinking something was wrong. And then we've come to about the 28-week mark where I'm like, no, I can't feel this baby moving. And my mom and my sister at the time were like, you know, get to the hospital now. That was kind of there. And I was on the phone. I remember being like sort of irrational, thinking, oh, but maybe things are good. Maybe it's fine. Like, maybe I'm overreacting. They think it's muscle this, or they think everything's fine. And I just remember the urgency in their voices, like, to go now. There's no reason, like, get your husband and get him to drive you there immediately. So that's what we did. And I remember in the car, we were sort of half like questioning ourselves, like, maybe this isn't, like, do we really need to, I was in tears and we're really worried. But just, I say the same thing in the book, that the words coming out of my mouth to the nurses is so surreal. Just saying, like, I can't feel my baby moving. That is, yeah, it's a horrible feeling. It's a horrible thing to have to say. And you're kind of the whole time wishing that you're imagining it, you know, that.
Yeah. And I can imagine that first trip that you would have done where they sent you away, saying, you know, sent you home. That's, on some level, you would have been hoping for that anyway, because you don't want to hear that things aren't okay.
Yeah. I remember leaving that first time and sitting out on the park bench by the road and saying to my husband, like, I don't know why though, because I'm still feeling so sick. Like, I still feel the same. Why have they sent me home? Like, I remember being so confused. Things just didn't feel right to me. And I think that's also a confirmation, you know, now, like, you know your body best, you know, when something isn't right. And often you are made to question your own intuitions about your body because we've learnt not to trust ourselves. You know, as women, as a society, we've kind of learnt that we probably don't know best. And so therefore we need to really 100% just use the information given to us versus querying it within ourselves. So we were so lucky at the time to have really compassionate midwives that were kind. You know, we all know that it can be a bit of a lucky dip sometimes when you get sometimes practitioners that aren't as maybe empathetic. So she brought us to a room and, you know, was trying to be fairly cheerful and like, you know, we'll just have a check and lay up on the bed and we'll see if we can hear baby type thing. But reality slowly starts to hit as you kind of see the concern in their demeanor change and the way they start to interact with you change, and you kind of go, something's not feeling right. And that's when they sort of said to me, we're just going to get the doctor in to have a proper look, and moved us into another room. And that's when they did a full proper ultrasound and confirmed to us that there was no heartbeat. So, and said that it was likely that Jaden, our baby, had passed away a day or so before. So that's a flood of all kinds of emotions, guilt and shame and so much sadness, so much grief for a loss of a life that you've been caring for. As well as a lot of anger, thinking, well, 2 weeks ago, maybe this wouldn't have been the response, you know. And now part of my only way to really cope through those feelings that they still creep up for me, thinking, what would have happened had they really paid attention 2 weeks before? And I sort of have to say to myself, well, he may still not have survived, you know, which is a possibility. But for me, sometimes I think, yeah, he might not have, but maybe I would have seen his eyes open, or maybe I would have heard him cry, or maybe I would have any of those things. So that's a real challenge for me still. I battle with those feelings a lot. So having to deliver that news as well as a parent to everyone who knows you're an expectant parent is devastating, you know, having to phone parents and just tell them, you know, our baby's died and there's no other way to do it. I think that sometimes we try and, I don't know.
You don't want to make other people uncomfortable.
Yeah, you try and kind of, but there's no other way. Like, this baby has died, it is death, and there's no other way around it. And so that can be hard. So we kind of just told our parents and needed to leave the rest up to them, because there was no way we were going to be able to cope with having to talk to anyone else about it. So we were brought up to a really quiet room at the very back. I didn't even know this room existed. So it was so far beyond any other laboring room that you wouldn't hear anyone else. Which was really pertinent to the situation, because, you know, they knew what was going to have to happen. And I had an incredible midwife at the time who just sat on the bed and had a cry with me, which I will never forget, because that is the epitome to me of compassion, you know, is finding, you know, and as a health worker myself, you have those boundaries, those professional boundaries that you kind of go maintain your, you know, professionalism, but there are times when that is the most professional thing that you can do, is just
because you're still humans, and we're that human to human connection, that heart to heart connection, when it's genuine, is so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And at that time it was like, I don't think it was the best thing she could have done for me at the time. And so I'm still so grateful for that. I can't remember her name. I remember her face, but to me it was the most important thing that she could do for me at the time. So then they sort of explained to me what would happen. I remember them saying, you can go home and come back. And I remember thinking, you've got to be crazy. That was my own personal feeling. I know other people have made those choices, but for me at the time, I was like, there's no way that I can go home in this sort of state. So I stayed at the hospital, and I was induced and labored for a very long time, because my body was not ready to be delivering a baby. So we went through a really long process.
And how was the rest of your symptoms during this time, like that swelling and that pain that you were talking about?
Very bad. So I was still in all the same amount of pain as before. I was really close to losing my own life. I didn't know this until after, obviously, but the pain was just worse and worse. And then after Jaden was born, I was just in agony, and they kind of couldn't figure it. They're like, I guess in some ways they thought, once the baby's born, maybe that's what's causing all the problem. And so it wasn't until a few days later that I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that I'd obviously had my whole life, and hence the lead up, all those health challenges that I had as a young person were because of this. But we found out that pregnancy was a trigger for this sort of catastrophic event of your body's almost like attacking itself, which we didn't know. And so I had a lot of healing to do after that, and my body was sort of in attack mode, basically. And so I was on a lot of medications for a while to sort of get back to normal. But then it meant that subsequent pregnancies were very challenging and needed a lot of intervention.
So what beyond birthing Jaden and dealing with the grief and your own healing of your health, what support were you offered, and did you access during that time?
So I know pretty much everyone will have heard of Red Nose and SANS. So those are the two organizations that really have a lot to do with hospital sort of intervention. I know that I'm sure at some point they would have sent a social worker in. I don't really recall wanting to speak to them. And they gave me a lot of booklets about, what to do next, or if you need support. And I kind of just really couldn't take any of that in. The one thing that I did access was a memorial service. So, but that was really set up at the time. And then a year later, they get in touch with you, and, they say, we want to do this memorial service, and it's at a church across from the hospital, and they put all the babies' names and children's names that have passed. And that was really beautiful. And I really appreciated that sort of effort that they did for families at that time. And then the other thing that is probably the most poignant for me was a beautiful midwife who, out of her own sort of goodness, would do these beautiful hand and feet casts of the babies that have died. So she came up to my room. I was actually in the hospital for about a week after giving birth, because I was so unwell, and because I was able to spend time with Jaden. A family had donated a small, it's not a cuddle cot. Those are very new, but it's the same idea of a cuddle cot, which is a cold fridge, I suppose, for lack of a better explanation, that your baby is able to be in, and you can hold them and be near them whenever you need to. So she did this box for me and came up to my room a few days later and presented it to me in this beautiful wrapped blue box full of a tiny little teddy bear and some flowers and poems and these beautiful casts. And I remember her saying to me at the time, "Oh, Jaden has the most beautiful hands." And I just thought, it makes me a bit emotional. Hang on a minute.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's weird because you have to form memories.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Fine. It's completely understandable.
So those are some of the only memories you end up being able to form. And I just remember thinking, oh, someone else has been able to see this beautiful little baby, and he doesn't look like you expect, because he's passed on, and he wasn't full term, and so he was very tiny. But still those beautiful hands and feet, and so yes, you end up, you hold them and you spend time with them and you form as many possible memories as you can. And it's so that was very special to me. And it was probably one of my only things that I would go to when I was really struggling. I would just go to that little box. At the time, I didn't probably see the value in talking to other people, because I didn't know other people, because we don't talk about it. And so I had no idea that there was so many people that existed that were going through the same struggles as I was. It wasn't until after I'd had Jaden that people were like, "Oh yes, I suffered a loss," or "I had a stillborn baby," and I was like, "What?" I didn't even know, to be honest. I didn't even know the word. Like, I was like, I knew it's probably weird. Like, I knew from my mom. My mom is very much into family history. And so she used to talk a lot about babies that would die and how they might, rename a second baby the same name as the first that had passed away, or these sorts of things. So I kind of like had that in my mind, like people lost babies, but you don't really think that happens now. You're like, oh yeah, back in the old days, people lost babies.
Yeah.
And you just didn't think. And I guess I probably heard the term stillborn, but never really associated with the fact that was something that would happen, in our days.
Or even to you, like, you don't go into pregnancy carrying all the possibilities until you know that they are all the possibilities. I've had this conversation with many people in these interviews where there's this delicate balance between knowing enough to be informed and knowing so much that you can feel overwhelmed.
Yes.
And
I think I struggle with that even now, as when we're trying to inform, expectant mums. I feel worried about, there's two arguments there, like, don't stress mums out, don't give them all the information. And the other side is, okay, but they need some information, like they do need to be aware. So it's definitely a balance between not like scaring a mum, but I wish that I'd known, like, your baby has very specific movements. They have a schedule, just like you have a schedule, and that shouldn't change. And if it does change, then something might not be right,
That's right.
And so I think,
and it's like sending that information as it's relevant. Like, at 20 something weeks, this is what you should be expecting. At this point, this is what you should be expecting. It's that, it is that what to expect when you're expecting kind of thing. But
but in a real way.
Yes.
Not in like the funny sort of. Yeah.
This is a conversation we were having before we came on live, is that this is what's so important about sharing our story. This isn't about getting airtime. This is about the importance of real stories and how healing they are, how critical they are for people to go, like you say, I didn't even know that was a possibility.
Yeah.
But when you hear the real life, it's not to scare you, it's to inform you, it's to set you up for success so that you can be ready.
Absolutely. I feel very much that way, that I know some people sort of think when people share their very personal stories that they might be seeking some form of attention. And obviously you want attention, but not in the way that says, as you said, like, look at me, or, you know, I'm just getting it out there for the purposes of, you know, airtime. But really what it is I don't want this to happen to you. You know, I don't want you ever to go through this experience. Or, and the other side for me is, if you have gone through this experience or know someone that's going through this experience, here's how you can help them. You know, here's how you can be compassionate towards them or towards yourself. Or, you know, I'm in a group for parents who have lost babies, and one woman sort of started her conversation with, I feel so stupid that I'm, you know, and then she continued to talk about her grief. And the many comments, of course, were like, you're not stupid. Like, everything you're feeling is totally valid and totally normal. And that's what it is like, she should never feel alone in thinking that what she's feeling, what she's grieving, is anything but normal and okay. And so I think that's what it is. You kind of like, unfortunately, I'm, you know, 15 years down the road, and there's so many people still every day who are starting that journey today. And that's really heartbreaking. I mean, 6 babies alone in Australia will die today because of stillbirth. So that is a terrible statistic. And I think that's what I'm about, really wanting to make a change, so that people aren't afraid of this taboo topic, so that people are able to advocate for themselves and speak up for themselves and say, I am really worried and I'm not leaving this hospital until everything's okay.
That's right. Until you have an answer. That's right. So I think that leads us quite nicely to talking about then after it's happened, you know, how do you process the grief? How do you deal with the grief? How do you talk about it? So how has your path through grief differed to that of your husband?
Super different. I think often he was just trying to be like this strong, Liz is falling completely to pieces, and somehow I have to not do that. You know, because I was not coping. I was very much alone. I mean, my parents both came out here, which was amazing and so needed. And so they were here in those initial stages, you know, for the funeral, and helping me and Jake navigate that really challenging road of planning a funeral for your baby. And for a few weeks afterwards, but, you know, then they had to go home. And so I sort of felt like my crutch was being taken out from under me, where I could just sort of lean on them. And for myself, I just really became not a recluse, but I just sort of went into myself a lot and had to reflect on my own. A lot of people didn't say the best things. They probably were trying out of love and concern to almost, it's kind of what we talk about, that toxic positivity, where people are like, things are going to be okay, things are going to be fine, you'll be fine, you'll get through this. And it's like, just don't say a word of that. Like, I mean, for some people, maybe that is what they need to hear. But for me, it was not. I was like, things are not fine. Like, right now, they're not fine. And I'm not concerned about if they're going to be fine in the future. Right now, they're not fine. And you just need someone to really acknowledge that for you and say, you know what, it's not fine. And it's okay if you're falling apart. And you don't need to be happy right now. But I often
really,
felt
having that acknowledgement and that validation is so important.
Yeah, so important. I really struggled with seeing pregnant people and new babies. That was a huge struggle for me. I had no ounce of happiness inside of me for those people. I think others struggled with that because they kind of didn't know how to take that. But
Yeah.
I pushed back so much in that respect. I only had one woman who I knew of who opened up to me and talked to me about her stillbirth, probably a good 20 years before that. So you can only imagine what her experience might have been like.
Mm, yeah.
And so for me, that was really good to have her understanding and sort of have that connection, which we've been able to become quite close. But that was it. I didn't take part in groups. I'm so glad that there's these groups people can be in now, because it is really essential. We just sort of moved on in very different grief paths.
Mm.
I probably didn't really move on for a long time. And he sort of had to compensate for that, probably, where he was, maybe going to things or explaining why we weren't going to things, and or just tagging along with me in support when I had to leave the room for something or whatever it might be. So I think that's challenging. He didn't want to talk about it anywhere near as much as I needed to.
Mm.
So those all become very challenging things to deal with in a new relationship. And
Yeah.
when I've often talked as well about the fact that you're going through all the postpartum things that a woman would have gone through normally after a birth, and yet you don't have a baby to be nourishing or looking after or healing with. And so,
And triggering the oxytocin, all those
yeah,
other healthy hormones that help
that's
with
right.
those,
Those
those
emotions.
steps.
That's
Yeah, it's the
right.
fourth
So,
trimester, really, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. And then you're having to do it really alone, and sorry, no baby to sort of show for it. I remember sort of thinking desperately one day out at the shops, just thinking, oh my gosh, I just want to like yell to everyone in the shop, like, I'm a mom, I had a baby. But
Yeah.
nobody knows that. Nobody
Mm.
can see that I've had a baby, so yeah, those things are really hard, and that's part of the reason why it's taken me this long, to feel like I can really open up about it all and want to make a different sort of effect in the boss world. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, what would you say to a new mother in grief who is in this really raw early stages? Because, we know that there's no timeline to grief. I mean, I'm assuming in what you're saying that for you, that was a very real experience. People couldn't go, oh, there was no just moving on. Like you
Yeah.
needed to be there and really honor it and feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I'd say, I've had an opportunity to become really close with someone recently who has had a loss. And it has been interesting for me to sort of support them in that process, in their very, very new loss, and have her reflect back to me about how grateful she is that she's able to chat to me. And I never really, I didn't plan that, but I hoped that somehow through sharing my story, that it would mean an opportunity for me to tell another mum, it's okay that you're anxious. It's okay that you're stressed, or that you're falling apart today, or that you can't stop crying. It's okay that you're angry. All of those things are okay. And nobody don't feel that someone is telling you you shouldn't be doing those things, because people will try. People will try to say, let's let's move on from this, or let's try and be happy today, or there is no time frame. In a month's time you might fall apart all over again.
Yeah.
And then in 6 months time you might, and that's okay. And the other thing that I think for a new mum is you often will feel a lot of guilt if you then try for another baby. There's so much guilt and shame and worry that other people are thinking you're just trying to replace this baby, or whatever it might be, there is so much guilt around it. And what I want those new mums to know is that there shouldn't be one single ounce of guilt, because it's completely natural to want to have a baby in your arms, because that's what you should be doing. That's what was supposed to be happening. And that no matter how soon or long after your loss you have another baby, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that any less for your baby that's died. I had those feelings, thinking I fell pregnant fairly soon after having Jaden. And I remember thinking, even for myself, I put some of those feelings of shame or guilt where I thought, oh no, I'm just trying to replace him, or people will think that that's what I'm trying to do. But what I really wanted to say to them, which I never really had that, I guess, strength, was to say, what would you do? What would you do if you'd lost your baby? And you needed to be a mother. You needed to do those mothering things that you had planned to do. So yeah, that's probably a very long answer, but I just think that let's talk about it. Let's not be ashamed. Let's not be scared to share pictures of our beautiful babies and open up to one another.
Yeah, that's right. So that leads quite well then to just a last question to wrap up here. What are your hopes for the future in this area of grief and loss about pregnancy and infant loss?
Well, I really hope to just keep spreading awareness about how to keep you and your baby safe in pregnancy. I think that there's a lot of, as I said before, a lot of sort of tug and pull between the have as natural a pregnancy and birth as you can versus few interventions. That's a very big topic, and I don't sit on one side or the other. I sit with let's have as natural, healthy pregnancies as we can, where we recognize that sometimes intervention is absolutely necessary. And so I think that that's the important message we should be spreading, that you're no less of a mother because you required intervention, and that at the end of it, what we want is a healthy, live baby. So that's what I'm hoping to do. I'm also doing I'm putting together these special boxes, which you might have seen, for grieving mothers. And that's really important to me, because I think that even though we are trying to decrease the statistics that occur about stillbirth and miscarriage, unfortunately, it's still, the fact is that still loss happens. And I think it's really important that a new mum in her loss is supported to look after herself, because that was one thing that for me, I didn't do. I probably really stopped looking after myself because I was so busy grieving and so busy trying to help other people feel comfortable with the fact that I was a mum grieving, that I didn't. So these boxes to me are a way to say, like, I can't fix the situation, but I can put my arms around you and help you look after yourself.
Yeah, beautiful. Can you please put the links for that and your book in the comments within the group with this interview, with this video?
Absolutely.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I will do.
Thank you so much for bravely and vulnerably and generously sharing your time and your story, Liz, today. I really, really appreciate it. And for, of course, coming back at the end of the month. If anyone has any questions for Liz that they want to either ask within the group, please put it in the comments or bring it along for the event on the 27th. We'll be providing that women's circle in that space to talk with all the women who are sharing their stories on the Tuesdays throughout October here in the group. Thank you, Liz. Really, really appreciate it. And I know there's so much more we could have spoken about, and I know that we will speak more at the end of the month, but I hope you have an amazing day. And everyone else, thank you for listening in. And yeah, please put any questions that you have in the comments and we'll do our best to address them.
Great. Thank you so much, Belinda. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Liz. Bye. Yeah.